Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you're doing well. My name is Donna Miller, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Purse Power. And Purse Power is trying to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. I'm really excited to have Monte Wyatt here on the show today. He's with the CEO of AddingZEROS. He's also an executive coach. And I got a hold of his book recently, Pulling Profits Out of a Hat, and it is incredibly valuable. I know this is going to be a terrific show. I'll get a lot out of it. We're in meeting format today, so we are taping the program. Please do go to our website. We've got about 84 episodes up, and we've talked to all kinds of national leaders about information that's useful to female entrepreneurs. Monte has made a global impact for CEOs and executives and coaches over the last 30 years. He wrote the book that I told you about, Pulling Profits Out of a Hat, in 2019 and achieved bestseller status with the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. The process and content of Pulling Profits is a foundation of his teaching, facilitating, and organization called AddingZEROS. I asked Monte to join us because I found his book to be so useful. I know you will learn from the content today. And Monte brings clarity to how people lead and manage their organizations and their teams. His past recognitions include being a Hall of Fame coach, achieving best client results, Executive Coach of the Year, Best Business Consultant, Most Influential Business Guru, Best Business Author, Partner of the Year, Master Coach of the Year, and Best-Selling Author. So he's got quite a list of credentials here. We're delighted to have you. Thank you so much, Monte.
Absolutely, Donna. Look forward to the conversation.
This is going to be great. Okay, let's start with your background. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an Iowa farm boy. My dad and my brothers still farm. They're doing harvest right now in Northeast Iowa. And I went to Iowa State and studied ag business. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to go back and farm. And so I studied ag business. And while I was there, I got an internship with an agricultural chemical company and had a second internship with them, and then went to work full-time with them and was a sales rep for them, a sales trainer, sales manager, marketing manager. And over 14 years, I lived in 5 or 6 places across the country and had great leadership and management experience. And after the third merger, I got to move back to Iowa. And it was just very interesting through that time. You know, new companies coming together, they weren't clear on where they wanted to go or how they wanted it structured. I think in 4 years, I had 5 different roles. And I just was frustrated because I was traveling and wasn't clear on where the company was going. And I just had this drive that I want to help people not have the scenario that I was going through. And so 18 years ago, I left that organization to help executives and CEOs, as you said, bring clarity to how they're leading and managing their organizations, their team, and how they think about how they influence others. And so that's just been so powerful. And I love impacting people with small changes in their thinking or their behaviors as I work with the executive team and how big of results it can create.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Many of the people that listen to this webcast are authors. And I was wanting you to talk a little bit about becoming an author. Why did you write your books? How have you used your books to market your business? Anything you can give us on that side?
You know, one of the things that really drove me was I want to impact more executives. And to me, it is about impact. And so, yeah, I can impact 10 or 15 clients and 6 or 8 executives in each team, and then they can influence their employees. But I wrote a book so I can influence more people around the world. And in fact, when I launched the book, I also started training other facilitators around the globe to use the content and the process that I was following. So currently I have about 12 facilitators around the world that are helping get that content out there so we can impact more executives and leaders. And to me, it is a great tool. aspect of it. Anybody can get bestseller and stuff like that on Amazon, and that's a great way to get your book out there and all that. And that was a big part of it, is I want more awareness. So I did a lot of marketing because I wanted to get out in the world. So that's why we did the right things to market the book, to get bestseller on Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and that's really helped awareness to the concepts and even the process. And through the last few years, I've actually even stopped using the word coach, because I'm more of a facilitator. Yes, I'm coaching them, but coach is so overused and people don't know what coaching is. And I wanted to teach the world that you need a facilitator to help you drive your business. And so I facilitate executive teams to think differently. And the process that I follow is what I outlined in the book, because I want people to embrace discipline in themselves and their organizations. And I think that's an area that's missing today in so many places.
No, I agree. You know what, the thing that's occurring to me, did you license your content to these facilitators? I've heard people generating revenue like that too.
So absolutely. So I've licensed the content. I train them, I coach them, I keep supporting them so they can go out and serve their clients and best. So it's a great model, but it's a part of what's the platform that you're building. And one of the concepts that I teach is defining what a great business is. And to me, a great business is one that's sustainable, predictable, stable, consistent, and has an emotional connection. What I mean by that, sustainable, a business should outlast us. If we're doing the right things, a business should be here long after we are done. So every decision that we're making should be for the long term, should be outlasting us. Predictability, we should know that when we do action X, we get result Y. And so our business becomes predictable. We know that we get X number of clients, we have X revenue, whatever it might be. Stable, it's about our team. We have high engagement, high retention. And then it's lost my train of thought. You got sustainability, predictability, stability, consistency. You want your business to be consistent. So no matter who the customer interacts with, they're treated the exact same way. And then the last word is emotional connection. People love who we are and why we do what we do. That's a great business. And that's what I'm teaching executives and organizations, to build that type of business, because it's not just about paying the bills today. It's not just about working out of our house. It's about, what are we building?
Well, I know that you referred also at the beginning of your book to the 5 constituencies that we need to satisfy. I'm going to ask you to talk about the model you were just describing, but tell us about that piece, the constituents.
Absolutely. So it's a tongue twister. Constituents, yes. We as a business, we have things that we have to satisfy. And that's what I think of. Who is our constituents? So many businesses and organizations, and I'll start at large organizations, they focus on their stakeholders, their shareholders, their board of directors, their ownership. And that might be the only constituent that they focus on. But there are 5 that we have to get right. And I'm going to start with, the company is a constituent that we have to satisfy. Again, to be a long-term organization, how are we generating cash for the future? How are we investing into the future? How are we making sure that we have sustainability long-term? The second constituent we have to satisfy is the customer. We satisfy the customer, they come back time and time again. The third constituent is the team. And I'm giving these in no particular order, because when we satisfy the team, we not only keep their engagement and their retention longer, but when you have a satisfied team, they satisfy the customer better. If we have an unsatisfied team, they're not going to serve the customer as well. So we've got the company as a constituent, the customer is a constituent, the team is a constituent. The next constituent is that stakeholder. It could be shareholders, it could be investors, it could be the owner, the board. But the 5th constituent is our communities. When I think of satisfying a community is satisfied when we add more jobs. A community is satisfied when we volunteer in our communities and we give back. I truly believe this. One of the responsibilities that we have as successful businesses is to give back to our communities. And yes, we can bring jobs, but how are we donating to our communities? How are we helping the future of our park systems and our school systems? But how are we gaining new jobs, and how are we volunteering in those communities? So my belief is that we can't just focus on one or two of those constituents. We have to balance it and focus on all five. And it takes intentional activities. We can't just focus on satisfying the share price. Things can go wrong. We can't just focus on satisfying the customer, not satisfying the employee. We have to satisfy them all for future impact.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't have this as one of the questions, but what was occurring to me as you were talking is this whole quiet quitting thing going on, how companies are struggling to find the right people. Back to your point about the team and serving the customer, do you have any insights about what's going on and how companies can overcome the issues?
You know, it's interesting. The Great Resignation and quiet quitting, these things aren't new. We just put a new name to it. And, you know, the Great Resignation is not caused by the pandemic. People have been leaving for 100 years. I found stats the other day in newspapers going back to the early 1900s of business owners saying nobody wants to work anymore. So these concepts are not new. I think that what's occurring is, you know, when I gave that definition of a great business, the last component was creating an emotional connection. I think in the last number of years, organizations have been more focused on that constituent of the shareholder, or they've been more focused on profitability. They've been more focused on internal things. And so they're not focusing on their employees as much. So I believe that emotional connection, when people aren't connected to their company, they will leave for another 30 cents or $1 an hour. People wanting to work from home isn't necessarily that they want to work from home. They want more flexibility, and they don't have that emotional connection with their coworkers. They don't have that emotional connection with their company. And the farther away we get from the company, the less emotional connection that we have. And it works both ways. If the company isn't emotionally connected to their team, the employee's going, why should I be emotionally connected with them? And so that's my view of what's going on. What's happening is not new. It's just happening at a greater level than maybe it's ever had before. But I think I'm going to put it this way. Instead of the Great Resignation, I'm calling it the Great Excuse, because executives and management teams need to take ownership of creating that emotional connection with their people. And engagement starts at the executive level. If the executives aren't engaged, why would an employee get engaged?
Yeah, very true. It's interesting. I've worked with some client companies that are trying to stay connected with their employees through the pandemic, and you've got to really work at it to make sure it happens, particularly if people are remote. Your point is really well taken.
Absolutely. And it's an intentional discipline. And that's why I say it. We got to create disciplines in ourselves and our organizations, because that's what their customer and the team wants. And if we can't provide that, they're going to go where they feel they can get it. It may or may not be better or greener on the other side of the fence, but they're not feeling it today. So they are looking somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So talk to us about the 5 disciplines you think that AddZEROS. Could you please expand on that?
So when I think about organizations, I always go to how disciplined is the organization, because so many positions are successful based on the person in that seat. And we want the person to add their personality to it, their unique skill sets, but every organization still needs to have discipline. And when I think of disciplines that organizations can miss, or organizations that they need to be consistent in, I think of these 5. Number 1, it's a strategy discipline. Every organization needs to be so clear on their strategy, and every team member needs to know what their strategy of how they're going to win is. So their activities every day is moving them closer to what that result is. What is our strategy? So many people are so focused on a product strategy and their actions for the day. A strategy is actually long-term success. It's not what's our strategy for the week. No, it's what's our activity for the week that helps us achieve our long-term strategy. So keeping focus and consistent on what that strategy is and how we fulfill it. That's a discipline. The second discipline is business development. So many companies, and I'm not going to do it justice here, but we've all ridden on a teeter-totter at some point in our lives as children. So many companies, well, we need business, so we focus on marketing. Well, then we got all kinds of leads. We got to focus on sales, and we stop the marketing. It's a teeter-totter effect. We need to be disciplined around our business development, which is marketing, sales, and customer service. We've got to have our processes of how do we consistently generate leads? How are we converting them through our sales activity, whether it's online or it's with our sales team? And how are we teaching our salespeople to be effective in their selling activities? Everyone is in sales. Everyone is a part of customer service. Everyone represents who we are. So organizations need to have a discipline around business development. And because businesses get busy and then we're not going after new business, well, someday you're going to have a gap because you have no new customers coming in. The third discipline is people. People are so important. We need a discipline around it. And when I say discipline with our people, it's about consistent development of our people. And I want to start with leadership. I truly believe this, that every person can and should be a leader. Leadership is not a role, it's a behavior. Management is a role. The world has done a disservice to this. We call management and leadership the same thing. They are not. Just because someone is a manager does not mean they are a great leader. Someone can be a leader and not in a management role. So we as organizations need to create our discipline of how are we teaching and giving empowerment to our teams so they can become leaders, so they can show assertiveness. They are leading themselves. But we as organizations also need to take ownership of how are we developing our team to be best in their functions. You know, what is our internal training process to be great? What trainings externally are we sending them to so they can become the best in their field? That's talent development. The third part of the people discipline is how are we attracting the right people for our organization and for our positions? And, you know, today everybody is looking for employees. And you don't want to hire somebody that doesn't have a job today because unemployment is so low. You have to steal somebody from a competitor if you want new employees. So it's what makes us different. How are we developing and training? So that's a big part of the people discipline. The next discipline is about execution. Execution is how are we being consistent in all of our activities? You know, we as consumers, no matter which grocery store we go into, Hy-Vee is big here. So there's a dozen Hy-Vees in the area. I want to go into Hy-Vee knowing that every one I'm going to be treated the same way. So in consistency, it is how are we training? How are we developing? What are our processes that we need to duplicate so every location interacts with our customers the same way? I've traveled around the world and been to many conferences. I've been to McDonald's in Sydney, Australia, Barcelona, and London. And why would I go to McDonald's everywhere in the world? Because I know what I'm going to get.
Sure.
I'm going to get a crappy cheeseburger, you know, but it's the consistency that execution brings. But part of execution is how are we implementing our everyday actions? And that's a piece of what's our management discipline. When I think of management disciplines in an organization, one of the things I teach my clients is every team member, I don't care what your role is, every team member should have a 90-day action plan. That 90-day action plan is what I am committing to, and I have dates and timelines of what I need to accomplish or what I need to get done for the next team member so we can achieve our quarterly goals or our annual goals or our long-term strategy. What is our management process or our discipline? And it's not about managing people. And I want to say this again, leadership and management are two different things. We need to lead people and manage processes.
Okay.
Too many times we're trying to manage people. No one on this earth wants to be managed. We want to be led to something bigger and better. But what's the process we're going to follow? God, if we all did a 90-day action plan and we all updated each other on our progress every week or two, now we're managing a process and we're making steps forward to the results that we desire.
Yeah.
So strategy discipline, business development, people, execution discipline. The last discipline I want to share is probably the foundation of every organization, and I call it the mission discipline. Now, I want to say what I'm not talking about here. This is not about a mission statement. To me, the mission discipline is who we are and why we do what we do. So it's our core values, it's our purpose. And I want to dig into that for a second. Core values are behavioral. Core values plus our behaviors equals our culture. So if we don't have the culture that we want in our organization, we have to look at, are we living our core values and have we got them clearly defined so it describes what we want people to live by and act by, but are we also living them in our daily activities? And so many organizations need help in developing their core values. Maybe some of them need help making them more behavioral. But the second point is having a clear purpose. You know, a mission statement, and I'm going to call this 80s management, was a mission statement is far reaching. Where are we going long term? It's the mission that we're on. People today, we're in a microwave world. We want to be building stuff today, or we want to achieve stuff today. What's my purpose today? What's our purpose of our organization? And so this mission discipline is the foundation of a business, that it's who we are. Why are we doing what we're doing? And we not only want the team members and our employees to be emotionally connected to us as a company, we want our customers to be emotionally connected to us as a company. And so it takes organizational discipline. If we did everything that's based around people, every time we had turnover or a promotion, everything would change. We have to have organizational discipline.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that's occurring to me, so I've worked for a bunch of Fortune 500s and all of that, and you get people that do the strategic planning and they have a mission, they've got values, and it stops right there. It's on the website, it's in a binder on the shelf. And I think what you're talking about is really trying to make that live throughout the organization. However,
you are exactly right. So many organizations, you know, that third merger I talked about that I went through 18 years ago, I remember on day one of the new company, we all got this packet on our desk. And it was our new core values of this brand new company. They were never talked about after we received them in this packet. It was something on the wall. And if the executive team isn't engaged with them, nobody else is going to talk about them.
Right.
And if they're just words on the wall, and I guarantee they hired some consultant and paid him a couple $100,000 to come write these words and definitions, but they maybe never even knew them. But it's how we should behave. Business is just a game. And just imagine this, if we were all playing a card game or a board game here, but all of us played by different sets of rules, we're going to be frustrated. We're going to want to quit. We're going to throw the cards, whatever it is. Core values define our rules of the game, of how we're going to play our game of business. And if we don't live by them or review those rules, we have people, you know, hiding cards up their sleeve, or they're not playing fair and they're not working as a team.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing from an HR perspective, you got to have everything aligned. Your performance expectations, holding people accountable, you reward them based on those behaviors, right? To drive what you're doing.
We don't have our guidelines and our rules. Everything's just off of emotion or our feelings that day.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Can you talk a little bit about the sales playbook? I saw that in there. I haven't quite gotten into it, but what's that about?
You know, one of my favorite words is intentional, especially as salespeople. You know, salespeople, their mindset and their characteristics are they love people and they love going out and making things happen. As a salesperson, you have to be intentional. And when I talk about a sales playbook, it's making sure that our entire sales team is on the same page. We're consistent with how we interact with our customers and our prospects, and our messaging is consistent. So that sales book may talk about who our core customer is. Our core customer, not only in their demographics, but their psychographics, how they think, what pain they're going through, what needs they're wanting to have assistance with. but it's also what are we providing to that customer that's unique to the marketplace. And we have to choose our uniqueness. We have to explain it. Why are we different than everyone else?
Mm.
We have to think about in our playbook, what is our sales process? How do we uncover needs of the customer? How are we going to give credibility to ourselves? How are we introducing ourselves? How are we asking for business? Is it a process? Is it an action plan? Is it a pricing game? So there's many things in that book, but I love to think of it. It's got to be about the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to teach our sales force how to understand who our customer is. How do we attract the needs that we're going to fulfill? And how do we interact and add value to that customer that represents the organization as a whole? Not just about the salesperson, it's about the organization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a really key point. It's a really key point. And picking that avatar and really understanding who you're serving and what their needs are is, I've heard over and over again, is super critical to success.
Absolutely. And so again, being consistent is, what is our priority? What products are we focusing on? What products are most profitable as an organization that we're selling in the marketplace? And how do we position them versus other products? That's in a playbook so we can teach our team, and we have a reference manual. You know, one of the things that I teach is, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. Now, I can tell things verbally, but if you can't find it anywhere, then it's only in my head and I'm the only resource. So you get it down in this, sales plan or sales manual or process, then you can duplicate it and you can reinforce it and people can learn from it.
Oh, very good point. Very good point. All right. So a lot of us are small entrepreneurs, right? And we are juggling a lot. There's a lot coming at us. It feels like a fire hose. How do you prioritize? What do you do to prioritize?
Number one is, I believe we have to choose what it is we're creating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to be a long-term activity. And it could be, when do I want to retire? How much money do I want to have in the bank? Where do I want to live? What kind of revenue streams do I want? It's the long-term activity.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to define our strategy. So I know this is going to go out there, and most companies keep their strategy tight-chested. I'm going to tell you my strategy, and it's a one-sentence strategy, and I teach this to my clients, but you got to start with your strategy. My strategy is deep, wide, and for a long time, meaning I want to go deep into an organization. I want to go wide into the executive team, and they're going to stay with me for a long time because of the value I'm adding.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's my strategy, I've got to look for offerings that can supply that. I've got to make sure I've got the skill sets that can supply that and fulfill that strategy. So you define your strategy, and then you say, okay, I'm choosing where I'm going. I know my strategy. What are the activities that are going to help me fulfill that? Mm-hmm. So again, I've built my model where if I have 15 clients, and they are consistently and staying with me year after year, I don't need a whole lot of activity to get new clients. I may have turnover of 1 or 2 clients a year, but I don't need that many new clients. So I have a clear process of where I'm going. And you have to know your priorities that's going to make the biggest impact to achieve your long term. Now, when people are just starting in business, you're going to take every piece of income or revenue that you can, but I would even challenge that mentality. Focus on who your core customer is that you want to have long term. Mm-hmm. Instead of taking anything and everything, this is the type of business that I want. It may take a little longer, but you're going to build yourself into that market that you now are building what you wanted to achieve. So it prioritizes what's making the biggest impact to not only fulfill your strategy, but what you've chosen to accomplish. So many people get in business for themselves because they don't want to work for someone else. That might be an initial driver, but what are you creating? And that's a tough question to answer. What am I creating? I want a revenue of this. I want a mailbox money of that. I want to retire when I'm at this age and be able to travel the world. Okay, now that you've decided that, what is your strategy to get there, and what are your offerings to make sure that you build that. So it's your business model and what are your priorities to make it happen?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was also thinking about the Pareto principle. What are the 20% things that you focus on that have 80% of the results, right? In terms of, I think that I got that out of what you were saying.
We spend most of our time, I'm going to call it busy work. You know, how much time do we spend checking emails? How much time do we spend looking at things or dealing with issues that aren't helping us move the business forward or aren't helping us get closer to our goal? So being able to say no to things is actually stronger than saying yes to things. What am I choosing to say no to or not at this time to? And so when I launched the book, that was my yes thing. And so when I'm moving forward with the next project, that's my next yes thing. But at the same time, I'm saying no to other things or not at this time to other things.
Boy, that is a great reminder. That really is a great reminder. Thank you. Okay. All right. So from your perspective, you talked about putting infrastructure in place that keeps you on track. What metrics are most important for business leaders to be looking at, and how do you gather them, use them? Any thoughts on that?
You know, I want to follow up to that last conversation. You got to know where you're going. You got to have clear goals. And, you know, your clear goals should be revenue and profit, or your clear goals could be how much you're going to invest, or clear goals could be how many clients you want. But then it's every business might be slightly different. You know, if you have a organization where you need new business, you need to be tracking how many leads are we generating each week and what's my conversion rate. You know, so if you know you talk to 10 people and out of every 10 people, 2 people buy, well, that's a 20% conversion rate. Well, maybe to make the income that you want, you need X number of customers. Well, maybe you need to be seeing 50 people, and maybe your conversion rate needs to be 20%, 50%, whatever it is. So you have to understand, if you're in sales, that's how I would look at it. If you are a ongoing business, how long do your clients stay, and how can we get them to stay longer? As I mentioned, my clients stay for 6 and 8 years, and some are longer. Well, I do things to continue to add value to them and deepen relationships so they stay a long time. Yeah. So how long are clients staying, and how can we learn if they're not? I want to share one more because I think it's pretty powerful. If you haven't heard of the Net Promoter Score, this is a great one to be doing. It's not just, you know, you get feedback at 0 to 10. How did we do? Oh, everybody gave us 7s and 8. Oh, we averaged 7.5. That's pretty good out of 10. Well, is it? The Net Promoter Score focuses on 9s and 10s are promoters, 7s and 8s are neutral, 6s and belows are detractors. So you should get feedback from your customers, and watching that feedback. And there's books and there's statistics online all about this. And there are some industry benchmarks. And some industries, if you're at 60% Net Promoter Score, you're doing really well, because, you know, we can't satisfy everyone, but the objective is how are we constantly improving that customer interaction in that Net Promoter Score. So it's a different way of looking at your metrics and success, but it's from that customer's perspective. And it isn't just, oh, we averaged 8. Well, 7s and 8s are neutral. I'd rather what's our Net Promoter Score? So a Net Promoter Score, you actually take the number of 9s and 10s, subtract out the neutrals, and you get actually, you don't even count the neutrals. You subtract the 6s and belows, and you have a net percentage. So you may think, yeah, we're doing great, but we only had a 40% that were net in that 9 and 10 area. So it really depends on what your objective is. We can measure everything under the sun. What is it you're trying to gain? Is it new customers? Is it retention of customers? It could be employee engagement. It could be customer feedback. So it really depends, again, on what your goals are, what you're choosing to achieve, and what activities do we need to get right to achieve those goals. We can't just measure the results. We've got to improve and measure the activities to get the results that we're after. Wow. They're
really insightful. All right, guys, I'm going to ask one last question, then it's going to be your turn. So as an executive coach, you see all kinds of executives in action. Do you see any differences between men and women in their leadership styles? And do you think that there's some things that women can be doing to capitalize on their natural strengths?
So I want to bring a couple things here. Again, I want to reinforce there is a difference between leadership and management. Leadership is a behavior, management is a role. Leadership creates influence with passion and focus. Management creates logic and results and competence and productivity. So in a natural state, women are much better at the people side than men are. Men are after the results, in a general statement. In today's world, we need leadership and management. So, and again, my view is women do a much better job on that personal side, the relationship side. That's where we need the greater leadership. Leadership is about influence. So when I work with my clients, my goal is to raise both their leadership and management skills, because we need both in today's business. And there's strengths in different people, and as you said, different genders. So how can we maximize those things? When I talk about leadership, it is about influence. It's about where are we going? It's the energy. Everyone in the world today is struggling with different things, whether it's mental challenges, wellness, you name it. How can we help people push through that? That's going to take leadership. And that's going to take a different way of thinking. And what are we trying to accomplish? What are we really doing here to make an impact? And that's where I think the female side can absolutely assist there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, why don't you take yourself off mute and off, get back on camera, and what questions do you have for Monte? I think this has been really valuable. What are you thinking? Let me take y'all off, unmute here. There we go. Did anything really kind of strike a chord for you?
You know, I've noticed more women leaders lately, the CEOs and so forth, and women on boards. I've noticed more of that. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think when I think of a team, again, leadership isn't about a position, it's about a behavior, but we need different thinking in our teams. And when we have the same age groups in a team, we have the same genders in a team, we're missing different perspectives. And so I think we need different genders, different age groups, different folks represented in this room. And it makes us think differently about where we're headed and what are the true needs. And it makes us listen differently.
Yeah.
What about different races within the team?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a part of everything. Is we've got to have different perspectives to get the results. Right. And if we're all thinking the same way, then we don't have enough perspective of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's strength in the different minds and views and backgrounds, and yeah, absolutely. What else?
What other suggestions with the employment situation being so hard to find people? What do you suggest?
You know, one of the things that I work on with my clients is being able to tell our story as an organization. And everyone from the CEO to the janitor should be able to tell our story. And this story should say who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, where we're going, the impact that we're having on the world, and the culture that we have in our organization and what we're building every single day. And if we can't tell that story with passion, with focus, with energy, why would anybody want to come talk to us? And, you know, you look at job postings today, they all say the same thing: competitive benefits, compensation, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't tell me anything. Create an emotional connection. If you want to attract new people, we have to create an emotional connection. And that's where I talk about who we are, where we're going, what we're impacting in the world. And we have to be the best sellers of us. An applicant has to sell who they are. But I think it's more important that we are selling who we are and what we're trying to accomplish and what we want as an employee.
Is that
So
true? Go ahead.
Do some of that within your own team to make sure you're optimizing that. And then it's going to be easier to find the right people.
If we don't teach our team how to tell our story, they can't attract other new team members. Because if our team is the right team, we want more just like them. And so how are they telling the story out in their circles of influence, in their communities, so that we can attract more people? If they're excited about what they're doing every day, they're telling other people about it. But if they really don't care anymore, they're not talking about their job. They're not talking about loving their team members. And so, of course, they're pushing people away from applying to us.
Yeah, good point. I've been doing some technology staffing work, helping a client, and it's amazing how competitive it is out there. And you do have to sell well, sell your company, and they've got lots of other choices right now.
And when they're selling too many companies, it's all about money right now. And that's how they're stealing them instead of telling their story. People will leave for another $1 an hour, another $1,000 a year, or whatever. And guess what will happen? In another 6 months, somebody else is going to come offer them another $1, another $1,000, and they're going to jump again because they were never emotionally connected. So you do have to be competitive, but people will stay at a job if they love who the company is and who they work with, even if they're not going to get paid what that other company is offering, because they want this environment.
Yeah.
And I think there will be a recession. I'm going to call it now. There will be a recession. There will be people losing their jobs. Guess who's going to lose their job first? The ones that just were hired with a higher compensation.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Good point. What else, guys? Go ahead.
I had a comment and a question. I agree with what was said about the company being more engaging, but the other aspect of that, if your current employees, if they're not engaged, they'll be the ones to tell other people, maybe not at work, but on their social media, don't work here, don't come here, don't trust the people here. So it is a two-way street between the employee and the employer about respect, and that each party would treat each other well. And I think sometimes that has been lost. My question was in regard to the pandemic and the shutdown. You had discussed about the business outlasting you and being predictable and stable and consistent. But when you have something like that hasn't been seen since the last century or before, how did you advise your clients to stay afloat?
So great point. Again, there were a lot of businesses that actually through the pandemic did very, very well. And why is that? Because they had a product or service that it didn't matter if people were working or not, or they, I look at Amazon exploded, right? People stayed at home and they kept buying. There were some retailers that went out of business because they did not adapt to online sales as quickly, or having their inventory as quick to arrive. Yep, I can go to the store and get that. Well, God, I'd rather just punch it into my computer and I'll have it tomorrow morning. So it is thinking about how can technology is huge today. So how can we continue to serve our customers or add value to our customers, even in a remote world or in a sustainable market? When I talk about sustainable, it's not just, it's not the resource, it's being here long term. And if we don't have recurring revenue, if we don't have retention strategies of our customers, those are things that are gonna hurt us. I mentioned grocery stores before. How many grocery stores started a new service of doing the shopping for you and delivery for you during the pandemic? You have to find new products and services. And if we are, I'm gonna pick on a company that I don't think is around anymore, BlackBerry. When iPhone came out, BlackBerry kept their strategy with that ball or whatever they had in the middle, and everybody went to the iPhone, and BlackBerry doesn't exist anymore because they didn't adapt to the market. So whether it's the pandemic or it's a new competitor, we as organizations have to adapt our products and services to what's going on so we can retain our customers or we can keep our customers long term. And if every day is about getting new customers because we only get one sale from them, we're not a sustainable business. We need our customers buying every month, every 6 months, and it's ongoing. That's creating a sustainable business.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay, so we probably have time for one more question if anybody has one. All right. If you don't, what I'd like to say is, could you please tell us what is the most important things we should have learned from you today? And what actions do you want us to take coming out of the call?
What I hope you gain from me is being intentional. You have to be intentional with your strategy. You have to be intentional with your ongoing sales and marketing activity. You have to be intentional with how you're developing yourself and your team. You have to be clear on your goals. So be intentional, and every day be clearly intentional. And the other thing I want you to take away is, let's all grow in our leadership and our management of ourselves and our businesses. Leadership's a behavior, management is a role. We need to grow our behavior. It's how we communicate, how we interact, how we work together with others. That's leadership. And management is making sure we're making progress. We know how to do our job and we're productive.
Do you have some suggestions about how we can improve our leadership? Like, where should we be looking? How do we assess ourselves? How do we grow?
Well, when I think of leadership, it starts as personal leadership. So if there's something that you're not achieving that you want to be achieving, what do I need to grow as an individual? Do I need to get better at how I manage my time and myself? Do I need to be more focused on my priorities? Those are leadership behaviors. So maybe I need to be more focused on what my priority is every day. So if that's it, ask yourself this question every morning. What's the most important one thing that I must move forward today? If you did that every day, you're going to make huge progress in your organization. That is self-leadership. If we are constantly reacting to the phone, to customers, to people knocking on our door, we have low self-leadership because we're allowing the world to guide us. So I think self-leadership is huge. So whether it's how you manage your calendar, your time, where you're being intentional, or how you prioritize your focus, that's where I'd begin.
Boy, that is a good point. That is where I need to focus personally. Okay, and let's see here. Anything else? So, is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of how can we help you? Any final thoughts to share?
I just want to say this. I think with all of the conversations of quiet quitting, great resignation, we all have to step up to find new solutions. New solutions in how are we leading organizations? How are we influencing others to step up? And it does take a new mindset. And I think a mindset of abundance is needed today. When I think of abundance, well, scarcity is we don't have enough. Abundance, we have more than enough. But in a world of scarcity, it's I can't. In a world of abundance, it's how can we? And we have to start saying, how can we more often? And that is leadership. I don't care what your role is. You should be asking, how can we get through this? And let's find a way.
Boy, that is really important right now. All right. Any other final comments, guys, that you want to make before we close out the show? Okay. All right. We're good. Okay. Thank you again, Monte. You've been amazing. This was really valuable. Really valuable.
Love to hear that. Glad to see you all.
Really valuable. Enjoyed this so much. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. So what's one takeaway from you? So Ellen, start with you. What's one takeaway from you?
That there's a multitude of things here that we can all apply throughout our lives and not just impact the teams that we lead, the businesses that we lead, but our relationships with our neighbors, with the people that we go to church and socialize with. Let's dig in and make it all better. And let's erase some of the cloud that we will have, because I agree with you. We're going into a recession.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Joyce, how about you? Your takeaway?
I enjoyed what you said about the difference between leadership and management, because management is a role and sometimes they do get mixed up, and sometimes you just have a leader and you just have to move past that. But I like the fact of personal leadership, what you do every day to make yourself better and therefore do good by your organization.
I love it. Thank you. Jane.
Well, mine's exactly like Joyce. That's what I was going to say. The personal, every day, look at what my day is going to look like in the leadership role. The one thing I'm going to do that.
I love that. I love that. Nan, are you still with us? Well, Donna, how about you? What was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, for me, I let the world buffet me around too much. I think the thing that you said at the end around really being very planful and really focusing on the things that are going to make a difference and just staying on that track, it was really useful to me.
Wonderful. Love to hear that. Well, I loved engaging with each one of you, and you guys have an amazing year. And I can't believe it's October already, or end of October. So it's going to be 2023 before we know it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So I want to talk just quickly about upcoming guests. And then if you would stick around for a minute, Monte, I want you to hear about one of the programs we're driving. So on October 28th, we have a monthly networking session. And so we will do that on the 28th, and people from across the country will join, and folks are getting to know each other, get customers, partners, colleagues. On November 4th, I have Marty Barletta. She has got a book called Marketing to Primetime Women, and she's going to be on with us. And then on November 11th, I've got Dominique Reese with, she leads a DEI group with Plug and Play, which is a huge Silicon Valley-based launchpad organization. And then I just want to remind everybody that we're partnering with McLaren Cares to implement a program that's going to help underrepresented people get on the path to high-paying technology careers. So we're partnering with large organizations. We've got a very specific training program where we're taking these people that have not got any kind of hope at the moment, and we're putting them on the path to be able to make a very good living and get the technology skills they need to have a great life. So it's very exciting. If you know of any major companies that are having trouble finding technology talent or have some DEI goals around diversifying their employee base, we've got a way to do that very effectively. And as a former HR executive, this is more than a check the box exercise. This is something that really makes a difference. So please let me know if anybody's interested in learning more about that. I appreciate you being here. Thank you again. And Monte, I want to do whatever I can to support you and help you. And we'll get this out on YouTube. And then I want everybody to remember, please, purse power, we have it. Let's use it. Okay. Take care and have a great week. Thank you. See you next Friday.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Monty.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Bye, guys.